I left for a month-long business trip abroad, and when I returned, I discovered that my mother-in-law had sold the mansion I received as a wedding gift. With the proceeds, she bought large apartments for my brother-in-law and sister-in-law. My husband said, "We're one family. What difference does it make whose name the property is under?" I didn't argue. I just called my honorary brother. "Andrew, I'm in trouble. I've been robbed by real criminals. Welcome to the channel." The long flight from Paris to New York had finally concluded. I stretched carefully, feeling tired, but also deeply satisfied with a successful business trip. A month in Europe, 2 major contracts secured. I felt I deserved a rest. New York greeted me with its characteristic bustle and a damp autumn chill, so unlike the elegant coolness of Paris. But I loved this atmosphere, the atmosphere of home. As I exited the arrivals area, I immediately spotted Steve, our loyal family driver, waiting for me with a kind smile. "Welcome back, Miss Davis. Did the trip go well?" I smiled and nodded. "Very well, Steve. Thank you for picking me up." "My pleasure, Miss Davis. It's my job. Allow me to take your luggage to the car." Steve nimbly wheeled the cart with several of my large suitcases forward. I followed him, pulling my smaller carry-on, quickly blending into the crowd. Our usual luxury car was waiting in the pickup zone. Steve deftly placed the luggage in the trunk and opened the door for me. "Are we heading straight home?" "To Greenwich, Miss Davis?" "Yes, Steve, to Greenwich." The car smoothly pulled away, leaving JFK Airport. I leaned back in the seat and closed my eyes for a moment. On this trip, besides work, I had spent considerable time choosing gifts for everyone. Shopping was one of my stress relief methods. I bought my sister-in-law, Chloe, a limited edition Hermes bag she had been hinting at for months. Chloe was a capricious girl, obsessed with brands, but ultimately she was my husband's sister, and I could spoil her a little. For my brother-in-law, Isaac, I chose an expensive Swiss watch. Isaac was trying to build his business, and a fancy watch should give him confidence in meetings with partners. I didn't really understand his affairs. I only heard from my husband, David, that Isaac was involved in import-export. Well, the main thing was that the gift was there. For my mother-in-law, Susan Miller, I brought an expensive pearl jewelry set and several cuts of exclusive Italian fabric that I had specially ordered from a famous atelier. Susan Miller was a woman who cared deeply about her appearance and always wanted to be the most noticeable at gatherings with friends. These gifts were sure to please her. And for David, my husband, I chose an exquisite handmade crocodile leather briefcase from an old Italian brand. David was a family man, easygoing by nature. He never asked for anything, but I knew he would love this gift. I sighed softly. My marriage to David had lasted 3 years. I was the only daughter in my family and inherited the family business. David, on the other hand, came from an ordinary, middle-class family from a small town. After graduating from college, he stayed in New York to build a career. We met at a party hosted by mutual business partners. He was kind, handsome, and most importantly, he gave me a sense of peace. My father was initially not very pleased. He believed David was not our equal, but seeing my determination, he eventually conceded. On our wedding day, my parents gifted me a mansion in Greenwich, Connecticut. The house, valued at over $3 million, was registered solely in my name. My father had explicitly said then, "This is your personal property, darling. I'm giving you a place you can always come back to if anything happens." I just laughed then, thinking my father was being overly cautious. Our love with David was in full bloom. What could possibly happen? After the wedding, David moved in with me. Soon after, he suggested bringing his mother and younger siblings to live with us to make the house livelier. Susan Miller had been widowed young and raised 3 children alone, enduring much hardship. I thought that, as a daughter-in-law, I was obligated to care for my mother-in-law. Besides, the mansion was so large that a few extra people wouldn't cause problems. Isaac and Chloe moved in with us. At first, living together was not without friction. My mother-in-law was critical and loved to find fault. My sister-in-law was lazy and enjoyed living off others. My brother-in-law was an idler with no stable career. All household expenses, from food and groceries to pocket money for Isaac and Chloe, fell on me. I told myself that I was a successful businesswoman, earning well, and shouldn't be petty with family. David often told me, "Thank you, darling, for your generosity to my mom, my brother, and my sister. I know it's not easy for you." That one sentence was enough to make all my tiredness disappear. I tried to smooth everything over. I gave Isaac startup capital to open his own firm. I got Chloe a cushy office job at my friend's company. I hoped that once everyone's lives were settled, peace would reign in the family. But it seemed my efforts weren't enough. Susan Miller often hinted that I was too absorbed in work and hadn't yet had a child. Chloe constantly compared herself to others, claiming I treated her worse than my friends. Isaac repeatedly asked me for loans for working capital. Only David remained tender with me. He often massaged my shoulders after a workday and always apologized for his mother and relatives. The car entered the Greenwich area. Shady streets were immersed in greenery. Steve stopped in front of the familiar bronze gates. "We're here, Miss Davis." "Yes, thank you, Steve. Leave the luggage. I'll ask for it to be brought in later. You can go home and rest." "All right, I'll be off then." I got out of the car, inhaling the familiar air deeply. A month away from home. I had truly missed it. I pulled my carry-on and walked up to the gates. I stood before the exquisite wrought iron gates. This wasn't just a house. This was my sanctuary, the property my parents had given me. I took my keys from my purse and inserted the mechanical key into the lock. Asterisk, click, asterisk. A dry sound echoed. The lock didn't yield. I pulled the key out in surprise and reinserted it. I turned harder. Useless. The key seemed to be hitting something from inside, refusing to make a full turn. What was going on? Maybe the lock was jammed? I frowned, feeling a slight irritation. Tired after the business trip, and now problems with the lock. I abandoned the key attempts and moved to the electronic security system. The house was equipped with the most modern security system. I entered my usual 6-digit code, asterisk. Beep, 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 asterisk. Incorrect password. Please try again. A soulless electronic voice announced. I froze. Incorrect password. How was this possible? This combination of numbers was my birth date. I couldn't have made a mistake. Maybe David changed the password. But if he did, why didn't he tell me? Did he forget I was coming back today? Impossible. I called him from Paris before my flight. He even asked me to come back quickly. He said the whole family was waiting for dinner. I tried to remain calm and entered the password again, carefully checking each digit. Asterisk, beep, beep, beep. Asterisk, incorrect password. Please try again. This time, a vague sense of dread began to rise in me. Something was wrong. Very wrong. I stared at the control panel. The system allowed 3 incorrect entries before a temporary lockout. I took a deep breath and decided to use the last option, fingerprint. I pressed my index finger to the small touchscreen. This was the most reliable security system, impossible to fake or input incorrectly. My fingerprint was registered as the main administrator, with the right to add or delete other fingerprints. A green beam slid across my finger. I waited for the familiar times beep times and the times click times of the lock opening, but no, fingerprint invalid. I stood rooted to the spot. Invalid. What did that mean? It didn't mean the scanner didn't recognize it. It meant my fingerprint had been deleted from the system. A chill ran down my spine, despite the brisk New York weather. Who? Who could have done this? Besides me, only David had secondary administrator access. Could it be? I stepped back a few paces, looking at my mansion. It still stood there, majestic and luxurious in the setting sun. But why did it feel so alien to me? The flowers in the planters on the porch still bloomed, but they seemed to mock me. I immediately pulled out my phone and called David. The subscriber is temporarily unavailable. I hung up. Alarm turned into genuine panic. Unavailable. At that very moment, I called Susan Miller, the subscriber. I called Chloe, the subscriber. I called Isaac. The same familiar phrase. 4 people: my husband, mother-in-law, sister-in-law, and brother-in-law all unavailable, while my fingerprint was deleted from my own home system. A horrifying scenario began to form in my mind. Had thieves broken into the house? High-tech burglars who hacked the security system and disabled everyone's phones. With trembling hands, I pressed the doorbell. The sound echoed inside, but the only response was an eerie silence. I pressed again and again, almost pounding the doorbell button. No sound, no hint of movement. I looked at my suitcases, abandoned on the sidewalk. Sweat broke out on my forehead, not from heat, but from the fear that slowly gripped my heart. I was about to call Steve, ask him to come back and call the police, but as soon as I raised the phone, I froze. I heard a sound very faint, but in the evening quiet, it was chillingly clear. It was laughter, giggling, coming from inside the house. I held my breath. That laughter was very familiar to me. I tiptoed across the lawn and went around the house to the side window of the living room. The window was slightly ajar. The thick velvet curtain wasn't fully drawn. I heard it more clearly. Definitely, it was Chloe's voice. "Mom, you're exaggerating. I told you, Dave is the best. Even if he loves his wife, he loves his little sister a lot too." Then, Susan Miller's high-pitched, slightly querulous voice rang out. "If he didn't love you, I would have shown him. What kind of man is afraid of his wife? It's a good thing he listened to me this time, otherwise he would have let that Marina walk all over him. Is this house her hotel?" My heart skipped a beat. What were they talking about? Afraid of his wife. Walk all over him. I tried not to tremble, pressing my ear against the cold wall. "Mom, keep your voice down. Dave is upstairs on the phone with a partner." Chloe's voice was still cheerful. "But I have to admit, Mom, you're a genius. I didn't think you'd go through with it." "And what did you think? If you're going to do it all the way." She's been a thorn in my side for a long time. She thinks just because she has money, she's the owner of this house. She looks down on us like beggars. So what if it was her wedding gift? Once she got married, her property is his property too. I told Dave, a man should have a voice. He should control the finances. Now that the house is sold and the money is ours, let's see how she'll get all high and mighty. Every word from Susan Miller was like a stab to my chest. They sold the house. They sold my house. They were sitting in my house, discussing the sale of my house. I heard Chloe quietly squeal. "I still can't believe it. We really sold this house, Mom." And Marina agreed. "The deed is in her name." Susan Miller chuckled, and in that laugh, I heard something I had never heard before. It was sharp and full of satisfaction. Whether she agreed or not, it's done. Dave signed everything. The contract is notarized. I told Dave he's her legal husband and has the right to represent her interests. No buts. I handled everything. Now we're just waiting for that buyer, Arthur Peterson, to transfer the final installment, and that's it. We'll move into a luxury apartment downtown. It's 100 times better than this hole in Greenwich. The house is huge. You'll exhaust yourself cleaning it. I had to lean against the wall to keep from falling. My head spun. Notarized contract. David signed. How could he sign if the deed was only in my name? Unless they forged the documents. They weren't just in the house. They were celebrating that they had tricked me, sold my house. And my husband, the man I loved unconditionally and trusted, was their main accomplice. Chloe continued, "What about Marina? Mom, she'll come back, and the gates are locked." A hint of worry was in her voice. "To hell with her," Susan Miller snapped. "I told them to change all the locks, erase all her fingerprints. She'll come back. She won't be able to get in. She'll have to call Dave, and Dave will tell her it's done. And what can she do? She won't drag the whole family to court. A woman who sues her husband's family is a disgrace. She needs to save face in front of her parents, in front of her company. If she makes a fuss, she'll only humiliate herself. Let her sit outside, she'll learn what respect is." I heard Chloe giggle. "Mom, you really thought of everything. Let our precious daughter-in-law get a taste of life." The panic and fear I had felt a moment ago vanished, replaced by an icy fury that pierced me from head to toe. I understood everything. Everything fell into place. This was not a theft. This was a carefully orchestrated conspiracy, the cruelest betrayal from those I called family. I stood silently in the shadow of the trees, trying to calm my breathing. The voices of my mother-in-law and sister-in-law continued to drift from inside, louder and clearer, as if they had nothing left to hide. "Chloe, call Isaac. Tell him to come down. It's time to go celebrate. I reserved a table tonight at a restaurant overlooking the river. We'll celebrate properly." Susan Miller's voice was filled with delight. "Yes, I'll call him now. Oh, by the way, Mom, the money from the house sale $3 million. How will you divide it?" Chloe asked, with thinly veiled eagerness. I held my breath. $3 million. That figure clouded my mind. When my parents bought this house, it already cost more than $3 million. With the current rise in property values in Greenwich, its value should be much higher. They sold it for $3 million. They sold my property for a pittance. Susan Miller cleared her throat, clearly pleased with the question. "I've thought of everything. Isaac handled the documents and the contract. I'll give him $1.05 million. You, my daughter, I won't shortchange either. You get $900,000. I'll keep $1.05 million for myself, just in case. And Dave will need to be taken care of. Fair, isn't it?" "Oh my God, $900,000, Chloe squealed. "How wonderful, Mom. So I can buy myself a luxury apartment downtown and still have money left over for a car and shopping. I love you, Mommy. That's good. I'm doing all this for you 3 children. As for Marina, she has money, but she's so stingy. Every time I asked her for a couple of thousand for expenses, she looked at me as if I was begging. Now we have our own money. We won't have to look at her displeased face." My throat tightened. Stingy? Every month, I gave Susan Miller $3,000 for pocket money, not counting holidays, birthdays, or trips. Chloe and Isaac also received no less than $1,500 each. All expenses in this mansion, from utility bills, salaries for staff and gardeners, to every meal, were paid by me. And now, according to her, I was stingy. I gripped my phone tightly. Contempt washed over me. They were not just greedy. They were ungrateful and brazen liars. "All right, I'll go call Dave," Chloe said. "He's been on the phone for a long time." "Oh, just ditch him. He's probably trying to contact that Marina. I told him to turn off his phone. Pretend he's in a meeting or something." So that was it. They had all planned to turn off their phones, pretend to be busy, so I would stand here like an idiot, waiting hopelessly. I heard footsteps on the stairs. Then David's voice. The same voice I once loved and trusted. "Mom, Chloe, what are you two chatting about so happily?" "Oh, Dave, you came down." "Brother, I'm going to have a new apartment. Mom's giving me $900,000. Isn't that great?" David laughed. A strained laugh that I immediately recognized. "Yes, great. Congratulations." Susan Miller asked. "Did you talk to her?" "She's probably already flown in." "Yes. Probably already here. I had a missed call from Marina," David replied. "And you didn't answer?" Susan Miller pressed. "No, Mom, I didn't answer. I turned off my phone. I closed my eyes. This was the end. My husband, whom I considered kind and easygoing, turned out to be a coward and a shameless accomplice. He knew perfectly well his wife was returning. He knew she wouldn't be able to get into the house, and he chose to turn off his phone." Chloe whined. "Dave, what if Marina comes back and causes a scene? If she gets angry, she'll stop giving me pocket money." I waited. I waited for my husband to object. I waited for him to say, "Don't worry, I'll handle everything." Or "How dare she?" But no. I heard David sigh heavily. "All right, Mom, Chloe, don't worry so much. We're still one family, after all. We sold this house to help Isaac and Chloe. What difference does it make whose name the property is under? What difference does it make whose name it's under?" That phrase from David's lips was more cruel than all of Susan Miller's poisonous words. It completely invalidated all my efforts, my legal right to ownership. It turned me from the mistress of the house into an outsider. Susan Miller, hearing this, brightened. "See, Dave is right. I know Marina isn't petty. She earns money. She should help her husband's family. If she makes a fuss, people will laugh at her face. This is a family matter. It's resolved behind closed doors. She'll understand. She'll understand. They think I'll understand." They think I'll accept that my house was brazenly stolen from me and keep quiet for the sake of family honor. A cold smile appeared on my lips. They had severely underestimated me. They thought I was a docile lamb, easy to deceive. They forgot who I was. I am Marina Davis, a businesswoman who has been moving in powerful circles for many years. I can be gentle when everything is good, but I will never allow others to trample on my interests. David's phrase, "What difference does it make whose name it's under?" echoed in my head. It was like a splash of cold water that dispelled the last illusions about the husband I once loved so dearly. 3 years of married life. I did everything for him, for his family. I tolerated his weakness, paid for his mother's greed. And this is how they repaid me. They didn't just take my house. They destroyed my trust. All right, I'll go to my room and rest a bit. We still have to go to the restaurant tonight. David's voice sounded tired. Good, you go rest. Chloe and I will start getting ready too. Susan Miller waved her hand. I heard David's footsteps receding upstairs, while Susan Miller and Chloe continued to chirp happily about what they would buy with their money. They discussed luxury apartments, expensive cars, lavish trips. They were dividing my property while being in my own house. While I stood outside the gates like a pauper, my rage subsided, replaced by a chilling calmness. I realized I couldn't burst in. Making a scene now, as Susan Miller had said, would only humiliate me. They would seize on the pretext of family matter, start crying, complaining, turning me from a victim into a cruel, calculating wife and daughter-in-law. No, I wouldn't give them that chance. I retreated, quietly left the garden, and returned to the sidewalk, where my suitcases with gifts still lay. I looked at them, and the smile on my lips grew even colder. Those gifts, perhaps, should be sent directly to the police station as evidence. I dragged the largest suitcase, opened the lock. I didn't take out the gifts. I dragged the suitcase right to the middle of the lawn in front of the surveillance camera, which, I suspected, they had also disabled, but it didn't matter. Let it stand there. I sat on the suitcase. My posture must have looked very comical. A businesswoman, just returned from Europe in expensive clothes, sitting on a suitcase at the gates of her own home. But I didn't care. I pulled out my phone. My hands weren't shaking. I didn't call my father. I didn't want to worry him. He was already getting on in years. His health wasn't what it used to be. I would handle this myself. I didn't call my lawyer either. Not yet. I scrolled through my contacts and stopped at a name listed as Andrew Thompson. Andrew was the son of my father's late best friend. My father considered him his adopted son, and I, my real brother. Andrew was almost 10 years older than me, a straightforward and honest man. He loved me very much and always protected me since childhood. And most importantly, Andrew was currently the deputy commissioner of the NYPD. He had told me many times, "Marina, you're alone in New York, business is complicated, anything can happen. If something happens, big or small, call me immediately. Don't hesitate." I took a deep breath and pressed the call button. I knew this call would change everything, that there would be no turning back. My marriage, this so-called family, everything would collapse at this very moment. The phone rang twice, and then he answered. The voice on the other end was deep and authoritative. "Marina, I'm listening. You're back already? Where are you? I'll send a car. We'll celebrate." Andrew's voice was cheerful as always. I tried to make my voice tremble slightly to show panic, but speak clearly. Andrew, save me. I'm in trouble." On the other end, there was silence for a moment, and then Andrew's voice immediately changed, becoming serious and alarmed. "Calm down, tell me. Where are you? What happened? Did you get into an accident?" "No, I'm in front of my house. The mansion in Greenwich." I spoke in a choked voice. "I just got back from a business trip, but I can't get into the house. The keys, the password, even my fingerprint. Everything is blocked." "What?" Andrew roared. "Calm down. Is anyone inside the house?" Yes, I sobbed. "I hear voices inside. Many people. I'm so scared. I heard them talking. They said they sold my house. They're dividing the money. Andrew, they're like a gang, An organized crime group. They've taken over my house. What should I do? I called my husband. My mother-in-law, no one is answering. I wasn't lying. They were a gang disguised as a family. Damn! I heard Andrew curse. Stay put. Do not, under any circumstances, go inside the house. Do not contact them. Do not say anything to them. You're right at the gates. So sit there. Don't hang up. I'm coming right now. I'll send a SWAT team. Property seizure in broad daylight in Greenwich. This is a high-profile case. Don't worry, I'm on my way. Andrew hung up. I turned off my phone and placed it on my lap. Everything had begun. I had pulled the trigger. I leaned back against the remaining suitcases. The evening sun began to set. I looked at the massive bronze gates, and a cold smile reappeared on my lips. You want to play family games? Fine. I'll show you how family matters are handled by the criminal code. I sat motionless on the suitcase, leaning my back against the other luggage. The street in front of my house in Greenwich had always been known for its quietness. Dusk was falling, and the last orange-red rays of the setting sun pierced through the leaves of the trees, illuminating my expensive business suit. What an irony. I had imagined my return. David would run out and hug me tightly. Susan Miller would smile and ask about the trip. Chloe would chirp happily, demanding gifts. All these images burst like soap bubbles. The surrounding silence was oppressive. I heard birds singing somewhere in the distance, the rustle of leaves, and from behind the gates, the laughter and conversations had also subsided. They were probably also getting ready for their celebratory dinner. They had no idea that a much grander drama was about to unfold. I didn't have to wait long. About 15 minutes later, I heard the wail of sirens from afar. First faint, then louder and clearer. Not one siren, but many. They tore apart the feigned calm of this wealthy neighborhood. I looked up. From the end of the street, with flashing emergency lights, a police car sped towards us. It was followed by 2 blue SWAT vans and a black sedan with blue government plates, which I immediately recognized brought up the rear of the convoy. Andrew's car. The convoy stopped directly in front of my house gates. Doors burst open, and fully equipped SWAT officers quickly poured out, fanning out and cordoning off the entire area around the main gates. Curious neighbors, accustomed to the quiet, began to peer from behind the gates of their mansions. What was happening? An arrest of a particularly dangerous criminal, or a murder. The door of the black sedan opened, and Andrew stepped out. He was in civilian clothes, but the bearing and aura of a commander were unmistakable. Tall, with a determined face, he quickly surveyed the scene and stopped at me. Sympathy flickered across Andrew's face, but was immediately replaced by severity. He quickly walked over to me. "Marina, are you all right?" I stood up, trying to appear weak, and said in a trembling voice, "Andrew, you're here." I was so scared. They're all in there. Andrew. Andrew gently touched my shoulder, and this gesture was full of confidence and support. "It's all right, I'm here. Step behind my car. I'll handle this." He turned and signaled to the detective from the Criminal Investigations Division, who had come with him, Captain Miller, secure the scene, ensure the victim's safety. Then Andrew turned to the gates. He didn't press the doorbell. He powerfully slammed his fist against the bronze gate, causing deep, echoing thuds. "Police, I demand that everyone inside immediately open the gates. I repeat, open immediately." Andrew's voice, loud and authoritative, echoed from the other side. Sounds of commotion came from inside. Someone seemed to have dropped and broken something. The squeak of chairs being pushed back, then the sound of footsteps. "Who's there? Who's outside?" Susan Miller's voice called out, but it no longer had victorious notes, only confusion. "It's the police," Andrew repeated. His voice was icy. "We've received a report of unlawful entry and property seizure at this address. I'm giving you 30 seconds to open the gates. Otherwise, we'll force them open." "What?" Chloe shrieked. "Police! Mom, Dave, why are the police here?" Silence lasted for about 10 seconds, and then I heard the click of an electronic lock. The system still recognized their fingerprints. The side gate slowly opened. David emerged first. He was in comfortable loungewear. His face showed complete bewilderment, as if he had just woken up and didn't understand what was happening. He saw the police cars, the SWAT officers cordoning off the area, and Andrew standing with a stern look. And then he saw me. I stood directly behind Andrew and looked him in the eyes. David's face changed, moving from bewilderment to confusion, and then turning deathly pale. He stammered, his lips barely moving. "Marina, you're back." "Andrew Thompson, why? Why are you all here? What? What happened?" He was still trying to pretend. Without waiting for Andrew's answer, Susan Miller and Chloe rushed out of the gate. Susan Miller had apparently hastily changed into a dark red velvet dress, preparing for the celebratory dinner. Chloe was also brightly made up. Seeing what was happening, both froze in astonishment. But after a few seconds of paralysis, Susan Miller quickly regained her composure. She saw me, and all her rage erupted at me. "Marina," she hissed, pointing at me with a huge emerald ring on her finger. "What have you done? You called the police to your own house? Are you crazy? Do you want to disgrace our family? This is a family matter. And you brought the police here." She was putting on a perfect performance of a mother-in-law offended by her daughter-in-law. She tried to portray everything as a family quarrel right in front of the police. Chloe immediately chimed in, hiding behind her mother. "Marina, why make such a fuss? We could have talked calmly at home, behind closed doors. Why did you call the police so the neighbors would laugh?" David, feeling the support of his mother and sister, also seemed to have recovered slightly. He stepped forward, trying to force a conciliatory smile, but it came out crooked. "Andrew Thompson, this is some kind of misunderstanding. Marina, you're tired from your trip, so you're nervous, right? Come inside, we'll talk calmly." Mom and Chloe were just joking. "Joking?" I said. My voice was quiet, but cold enough to cut through their words. "Changing my locks, is that a joke? Erasing my fingerprints, is that a joke? And forging my signature to sell the house my parents gave me, is that also a joke, David?" My words made David freeze. He looked at me, and his eyes reflected genuine horror. Andrew stepped forward, shielding me. He took a document from his pocket. We received an emergency statement from Marina Davis, the lawful owner of house number 20 on N Street in the town of Greenwich. Miss Cummins. Davis accuses a group of individuals, including David Miller, Susan Miller, Isaac Miller, and Chloe Miller, of fraud and forgery of documents with the aim of seizing her property, namely this house. This is a criminal case. I ask everyone to cooperate. Hearing the word criminal, Susan Miller flared up like a cat whose tail had been stepped on. "What? What criminal case? She's my daughter-in-law. David is my son, her husband. What's wrong if a husband sells a house? This house belongs to my son. Officers, don't listen to this witch. Leave. This is our family matter." She even tried to push past the officers. Andrew signaled. 2 SWAT officers immediately stepped forward, blocking her path. "Please maintain order. Resisting officers in the line of duty is another offense." Susan Miller retreated but continued to spew curses. Andrew ordered his subordinates to call my brother-in-law, Isaac Miller, who organized the forgery of documents for the house sale. He turned to me and said gently, "Miss Davis, please come inside the house. This is your house." Then he gave an order to the officers. "Everyone, go inside, conduct a search, and collect evidence. I demand that these 3 remain in the living room, do not move around, and do not use their phones." I walked through the gate. The first feeling was one of estrangement. The same garden I had tended with my own hands, the same gravel path, but the air was thick with lies. I walked past David without even looking at him. I headed straight into the living room. Susan Miller, David, and Chloe were seated on the expensive leather sofa I had personally chosen. Susan Miller's face was crimson with rage. Chloe began to tremble, and David hung his head, clasping his hands together. Andrew stood in the middle of the room, directing the task force. They checked the study, the master bedroom, the utility rooms, the entire video surveillance system, and the computers. I stood next to Andrew and opened my briefcase. I pulled out a neatly compiled folder of documents. "Andrew Thompson," I said clearly, "this is a notarized copy of the deed to the house, issued before my marriage. This proves that the house is my personal property." Here are my identification documents. I request that a report be made, stating that I cannot access my home due to changed locks. The detective immediately took the folder and nodded. Understood. We'll draw up a report immediately. Check the lock system, Andrew ordered. A technical specialist approached the electronic panel and the mechanical lock. A few minutes later, he reported. Lieutenant, the entire security system has been reset. The mechanical lock cylinder has been replaced. The owner's fingerprint has been deleted from the administration system. Only 3 fingerprints remain, matching those of the 3 individuals present here. Andrew nodded. His face was grim. He looked at the trio. Do you have anything to say? The fact of obstructing the lawful owner's access to their home is evident. Susan Miller still tried to argue. Well, she was gone for a long time. I changed the locks for security. What's wrong with that? She's the daughter-in-law. When she comes back, she'll call her husband, and he'll open it. Then why didn't David answer her calls? Andrew countered. David flinched, not daring to meet his gaze. At that moment, another officer came down from the upper floor, holding a folder. Lieutenant, a property sales contract was found in Mr. Miller's study. All eyes turned to the folder. Andrew took it and quickly flipped through. His face grew even colder. Sales contract. Seller, Marina Davis. Buyer, Arthur Peterson. Transaction amount, $3 million. Andrew looked up and stared directly at David. Seller's signature, Marina Davis. But according to the statement, Miss Davis has been on a business trip in Europe for the past month. He turned to the last page. Power of attorney. Marina Davis grants her husband, David Miller, full rights to sell. Signature, Marina Davis. Andrew placed the contract on the table. David Miller, how do you explain this? When was this power of attorney issued? When did Miss Davis sign it? David trembled all over. He looked at me, then at his mother. She signed it, Susan Miller suddenly screamed. She gave her husband power of attorney and left, and now she's denying it. Marina, how dare you deny it? I smirked. Really, Susan Miller? I was in Europe. All my border crossing documents are in my hands. When did I give him power of attorney? Where? In which notary's office? Please specify. Andrew added, we will immediately send this signature for forensic examination. But even before that, he pulled out his phone. He's going to check the accounts of these 3, as well as Isaac Miller's account. Hearing Isaac's name, Chloe flinched and turned pale. The technical specialist, working on a tablet, reported, Lieutenant, a quick check of transactions. An amount of $3 million was transferred from an account in the name of Arthur Peterson, but it was not transferred to Miss Davis's account. More details. Yes, $3 million immediately after receipt was divided into 3 amounts, $1.05. Million transferred to Susan Miller's account, $1.05 million to Isaac Miller's account, and $900,000 to Chloe Miller's account. Transaction time, this morning. Ironclad evidence, a forged contract, bank transfer statements, everything lay on the table. Susan Miller's eyes bulged. She couldn't believe the police had uncovered everything so quickly. Chloe had already started to whimper. And David? He hung his head. His shoulders shook. It was all over. Everything truly was over. The air in the living room grew heavy. Chloe's whimpers were the only sound breaking the oppressive silence. Susan Miller, mouth agape, shifted her gaze from the contract on the table to Andrew, then to me. Her aggression and arrogance evaporated, leaving only animalistic terror. David looked up. This time he wasn't looking at his mother. He was looking at me. His eyes, which I had once loved, kind and easygoing, were now filled with tears. He slid off the sofa and collapsed to his knees. Marina, forgive me. I know I'm guilty. He crawled towards me, trying to grab my legs. Please, tell Andrew Thompson to let me go. Let Mom go. We were foolish. Marina, remember our 3 years together. Forgive me this time. I promise I'll return everything. I'll divorce. No, I'll make Chloe and Isaac return the money. Marina, he sobbed. His words were incoherent. He was humbly begging for mercy. I took a step back, avoiding his touch. I looked down at the man kneeling at my feet, and I felt nothing. 3 years of life. You have the nerve to talk about 3 years of life? My voice was as cold as ice. When you conspired with your mother and relatives to steal my house, did you think about 3 years of life? When you forged my signature, did you think about 3 years of life? And when you turned off your phone, leaving me alone outside the gates after a long flight, did you think about 3 years of life? Each of my questions was like a knife wound to his cowardice. David, you're not just guilty. You're a criminal. And you're incorrigible. Hearing me call her son a criminal, Susan Miller went berserk again. She jumped up from the sofa. You dare call my son a criminal? You heartless, evil woman. You have money, but no conscience. You want to drive my family to their graves. I curse you, you treacherous snake. She lunged at me, trying to claw me. Protect Miss Davis, Andrew shouted. 2 police officers, anticipating this, immediately sprang forward, seizing Susan Miller's arms and pinning them behind her back. Please remain calm. One more move, and we'll put you in handcuffs. Let me go. Are you police or her thugs? Let me go. Susan Miller writhed like a caught animal. Andrew looked at this chaotic scene without the slightest emotion. He looked at the documents on the table, and then at the trembling trio. His voice was firm and cold. The evidence is clear. Actions committed by an organized group, by prior conspiracy, with forgery of documents, fraud on an especially large scale. I am authorizing the arrest of Susan Miller, David Miller, and Chloe Miller for investigative actions. Having said this, Andrew gave a signal. 3 pairs of cold metal handcuffs were produced. The first click times sounded. Handcuffs snapped onto David's wrists. He didn't resist. His body went limp. He allowed the police officers to lift him. He stood with his head down, hair disheveled. Chloe, seeing the officers approach her, panicked. She screamed. Her face was streaked with tears and snot. No, please let me go. I didn't know anything. It was all Mom. She planned everything. I just gave them my account number. Marina, I beg you, forgive me. I'm only 23. I don't want to go to jail. I'm begging you. She fell to her knees, bowing at my feet. But it was too late. The second click times sounded, and her manicured hands with expensive nail polish were in handcuffs. Susan Miller, seeing both her son and daughter being handcuffed, became frantic. You dare touch my children? Let them go, let them go. Marina, you're a devil. You've ruined your husband's family. You won't get away with this. Click asterisk. The third pair of handcuffs snapped onto Susan Miller's wrists. All her screams became meaningless. 3 of them, the man I once loved, the mother-in-law I tried to respect, the sister-in-law I was indulgent with, now stood in handcuffs, ready to be transported to the detention center. They were led through the garden, through the very gates they had so triumphantly controlled just hours before. I saw several neighbors pointing from afar. The scene, with the deputy commissioner of the NYPD overseeing the arrest of an entire family for fraud, right in affluent Greenwich, would undoubtedly be tomorrow's top news. I stood alone in the middle of the living room. The house suddenly felt enormous and empty. I looked at my suitcases with gifts, still standing by the door. The Hermes bag for Chloe, the pearl jewelry for Susan Miller, the crocodile leather briefcase for David. Now they were merely evidence of my foolishness and their greed. Andrew entered, having confirmed that all 3 had been placed in the police vehicle. Marina, a case has been opened. Now you need to come with me to headquarters to give an official statement. I nodded. The exhaustion from the long flight and the recent shock seemed to vanish, replaced by cold determination. Yes, I'll go. And thank you, Andrew. I looked at him without the slightest hesitation, and be assured, I will see this case through to the end. No reconciliation, no withdrawal of the complaint. I want them to answer to the law for what they've done. Andrew looked at me and nodded understandingly. I understand. Let's go. I picked up my briefcase and left the mansion, not once looking back. Night had fully descended upon the city. Andrew's car drove me away from Greenwich. I did not return to that mansion. Andrew ordered the house sealed to preserve evidence and conduct further investigations. My suitcases, including the expensive gifts I had bought, were also taken to headquarters. They were no longer gifts, but physical evidence confirming that I knew nothing of their conspiracy. NYPD headquarters was brightly lit at night. The atmosphere here was serious and tense, sharply differing from the luxurious quiet of Greenwich. Andrew led me to his private office, not a regular interrogation room. He poured me a glass of warm water. "Drink this, calm down. Now you need to recount all the events in detail. The more detailed, the better. Every word you overheard through the window crack." I nodded. Tiredness began to set in, but my mind was perfectly clear. I sat down and began to narrate. I told him I was the sole owner of the house, that it was property given to me by my parents before marriage. I recounted how David brought his mother and relatives to live with us. I told him about my month-long business trip. I recounted how I returned and couldn't open the door. And most importantly, I repeated almost word for word the conversation I had overheard. I mentioned how Susan Miller boasted about selling the house for $3 million. I mentioned how she divided the money. $1.05 million for Isaac, $900,000 for Chloe, and she kept $1.05 million for herself. I also repeated Chloe's words that Isaac handled the documents and the contract. Finally, I quoted David's phrase, "What difference does it make whose name it's under?" Andrew listened attentively. His fingers typed on the keyboard, recording all my testimony. Captain Miller, who had come with him, sat nearby, taking notes. "Your testimony is very important, Marina," Andrew said when I finished. "It proves this was an organized conspiracy, carefully planned. Susan Miller, the organizer. Isaac, the executor who forged the documents. Chloe and David, active accomplices. How did they manage to forge notarized documents?" I asked. That was what surprised me the most. "I've already ordered an investigation." Andrew frowned. "Something is wrong with that notary's office. Most likely, Isaac conspired with a dishonest notary public. Your signature on the power of attorney is undoubtedly forged. We will conduct an expert examination, but with your testimony and proof of your absence from the country, exposing them will be easy." I exhaled. "Andrew, I want Isaac Miller also to be prosecuted. He handled the documents. He received $1.05 million. "Don't worry," Andrew replied. "An arrest warrant for Isaac was issued as soon as we traced the money flows. A task force has already gone to his firm's address. He won't get away. That entire family will go to jail." I paused for a moment, then said firmly, "Andrew, I know what they'll do. They'll cry, say it's a family matter, refer to me as a wife and daughter-in-law to ask for reconciliation, to reclassify the case from criminal to civil. I ask you for one thing." Andrew looked at me. "Tell me. Prosecute them to the fullest extent of the law. No leniency, no reconciliations. I don't want to meet with them. I will issue a full power of attorney to my lawyer." Andrew nodded resolutely. "I understand. This is a case of grand larceny and fraud. There are no family matters here. You can count on me. It's late. Where are you going now?" "I have a penthouse in Manhattan." "I'll go there." "All right. I'll drive you. You should call your father. I'm afraid the news will leak to the press tomorrow morning. It wouldn't be good if he found out about everything from the newspapers." I nodded. "I understand." After finishing my statement and signing the protocol, I left headquarters almost at midnight. I only had my briefcase with me. Andrew drove me right to the entrance of my penthouse in one of the Manhattan towers. "Thank you very much, Andrew. Don't mention it. I'm your brother. Get some rest. If anything happens, call immediately. And I've arranged to change all the locks in the Greenwich mansion. Here are the new keys. But don't go back there yet. Let our team finish the investigation." He handed me a new set of keys. I took them. "I understand. See you." Entering the luxurious penthouse, I turned on the light. This place was radically different from the Greenwich mansion. There, I tried to build a family home. This was my personal space. I went straight to the bathroom and filled the tub with water. I needed to wash away all traces of that day. Lying in the hot water, I picked up my phone. Hundreds of missed calls and messages from distant relatives of the Miller family, people whose faces I didn't even remember. They had obviously already heard the news. The messages were similar, either cursing me for my cruelty and inhumanity towards my husband's family, or begging me to show compassion and forgive elderly Susan Miller. I ignored them all. I dialed my father's number. He answered immediately. "Marina, darling, why are you calling so late?" My father's voice was warm and calm as always. Hearing his voice, all my built-up resilience almost crumbled. "Dad, what's wrong, darling?" My father immediately sensed the change in my voice. I'm back. Dad, please listen calmly. Some unpleasant things happened with David and his family. I told my father everything, hiding nothing, about the locked doors, the overheard conversation, the call to Andrew, the arrests. I tried to speak as calmly as possible. My father listened in silence. When I finished, he merely sighed heavily. "I told you, darling, that David is a weak, spineless man. He's not worthy of you. But I respected your decision. And now it's come to this. He even dared to conspire with his mother to pull off such a dirty scheme. Dad, I'm sorry I worried you. You're not to blame for anything," my father interrupted me. His voice hardened. "You are a victim, and you acted absolutely correctly. Such ungrateful people must be judged by the law. Go all the way, darling. If you need anything, I'll take care of it. Our family's honor is not for any swindlers to trample on. No one dares to harm my daughter. Tomorrow morning, I'll send attorney Victor Stone to you in New York." Victor Stone was the chief legal counsel for our family corporation, an incredibly intelligent and experienced man. "Yes, Dad, I was just about to call him in the morning. Don't worry, I'll handle it. Take care of yourself." "All right, darling. Rest, don't think about anything. Consider it taking out the trash." Hanging up, I felt relieved. With my father's support, I had nothing more to fear. I turned off my phone and drifted into sleep. Despite the exhaustion, I knew tomorrow would be a long day. I woke up when the sun was already high. Bright light flooded through the panoramic windows of my penthouse, offering a view of the bustling city below. I had slept restlessly, but at least I had somewhat regained my strength. The first thing I did was turn on my phone. As expected, the news, though unofficial, had already exploded online. Several tabloid publications had begun to publish vague articles about a shocking arrest in an elite Greenwich neighborhood. Known businesswoman accuses husband's family of mansion seizure, wedding gift. David's relatives continued to barrage my phone with calls and messages. I ignored them. I called my secretary. "Emily, I'm back. Cancel all my meetings this week. I have personal matters. Connect me with attorney Victor Stone. Tell him I'll be waiting for him downstairs." "Yes, Miss Davis. Victor Stone is already on his way. He took the earliest flight this morning on your father's orders." I nodded. My father always acted quickly. I took a shower, changed into a sharp business suit. I didn't apply makeup, just a touch of lipstick to avoid looking pale. I needed a clear head. Around 10 a.m., Victor Stone arrived, a man in his 50s, with graying temples but an incredibly sharp gaze behind gold-rimmed glasses. He was the man who had helped my father build his business from scratch, and I trusted him implicitly. "Miss Davis," he bowed. "My apologies for the delay. Your father briefly outlined the situation for me. It's incredible that they dared to do such a thing." I invited him to sit on the living room sofa. "Victor Stone, no need for formality. You're like a senior mentor to me. Please, have some tea." I brewed the tea myself. The situation is exactly as my father described, but now I need your legal analysis and strategy. I handed Victor Stone copies of all the documents I had provided to the police last night, including the deed, my identification, and the detailed interrogation report. Victor Stone read carefully, and the further he read, the deeper his brows furrowed. He reread my report, especially the part where I quoted Susan Miller's words about dividing the money. Finishing, he placed the folder on the table. "Miss Davis, the situation is as follows. From the perspective of evidence, we have an absolute advantage. First, the deed in your name, obtained before marriage, that's an undeniable fact. Second, you have an airtight alibi. You were abroad during the forgery of documents and the transaction. Third, your testimony about the conspiracy fully aligns with the evidence of money movement obtained by the police. $1.05 million. $1.05 million and $900,000. This is unequivocally a criminal case under the statutes governing grand larceny, conspiracy, and fraud, committed by an organized group or on an especially large scale. The penalty is imprisonment for up to 10 years. I nodded. I want the maximum penalty. Victor Stone adjusted his glasses. That is our goal. However, he paused slightly. The other side will not sit idly by. They will undoubtedly hire lawyers. And their only strategy will be to try to shift this case from the criminal realm to a civil dispute within the family. What do you mean? They will cling to your marital relationship with David. They will argue that this is a family conflict, a quarrel between husband and wife. David will claim that you verbally agreed to the sale of the house. But upon returning and seeing that your mother-in-law unfairly divided the money, you became angry and created a fuss. They will try to turn you from a victim into a petty, calculating wife. Their goal is for the court to treat this as property division after a divorce, not fraud. I gave a cold chuckle. They've thought it through well. So, what should we do to thwart these intentions, Victor Stone? We must act on two fronts simultaneously. Victor Stone raised two fingers. First, within the framework of the criminal case, we must provide additional evidence, strengthen our position, leaving no loopholes. We must emphasize the fact of document forgery and the organized nature of the conspiracy involving Isaac and the notary's office. This is a key point. We must demand that the investigation look into and prosecute that notary public as well. Once we prove the fact of official document forgery, they will no longer be able to shift the case to the civil realm. I'll ask Andrew to handle that, I replied. He's leading the case. Excellent. Andrew will conduct the investigation from the police side, and I will handle the legal aspect. Second, he continued, these are immediate civil actions, not for dispute, but for asset recovery. These $3 million, they were divided into 3 accounts: Susan Miller's, Isaac's, and Chloe's. I clarified. Exactly. And I am certain that this morning, as soon as they learned of the arrests, their relatives who are still free will try to move those funds. We have little time. Right now, I will prepare and file an emergency motion with the court to secure protective measures. We will demand that the accounts of all 3, Susan Miller, Isaac Miller, and Chloe Miller, be frozen. Will we make it, Victor Stone? We will. We have the arrest warrant from the police. We have proof of the movement of funds. The court will approve this motion today. All $1.05 million of Susan Miller's, $1.05 million of Isaac's, and $900,000 of Chloe's will be frozen. They won't be able to withdraw a single penny. I nodded. This was exactly what I wanted. Victor Stone, I want to emphasize 2 points, I said, looking directly into the attorney's eyes. First, see the criminal case through to the end. I want all of them, David, Susan Miller, Chloe, and Isaac, to receive maximum sentences. No probation. Second, regarding the property, I don't just want to get back the $3 million. I want them to compensate for all damages: emotional distress, reputational damage, legal fees, as well as my costs for resolving the contract with the homebuyer. Victor Stone nodded. I understand you perfectly, Miss Davis. We will demand full compensation. You can rest assured, I will take care of it. And one more thing, I added. The homebuyer, Mr. Peterson. I know the contract is invalid, but I don't want to create problems for him if he cooperates. See how this can be resolved amicably, so he can get his money back as soon as possible. Victor Stone was slightly surprised by my foresight, then smiled. You're thinking very clearly, Miss Davis. We'll discuss that later. For now, I need to go to court immediately. I will inform you as soon as the order to freeze the accounts is issued. Yes, I'll await news. Victor Stone gathered the documents and quickly left. He was a man of action. I remained in the penthouse and called Emily. Emily, please do one thing for me. Find me all the information about the real estate company that handled the transaction for the Greenwich mansion, and also find information about the buyer, Arthur Peterson. Send it to me as soon as possible. Yes, Miss Davis. The legal war had officially begun. I wanted not just to get back what was mine. I wanted to destroy them. That day, I ate almost nothing. I just sat at my desk in the penthouse, looking at the flow of cars below. My brain worked nonstop. I waited for 2 pieces of news, from Victor Stone and from my secretary. Around 2 p.m., the phone rang. It was Victor Stone. I immediately answered. Miss Davis, everything is ready. Victor Stone's voice on the other end was calm, but satisfaction was audible. The court issued an order for protective measures. Orders to freeze accounts have been sent to the 3 banks, where Susan Miller, Isaac, and Chloe have accounts. All $3 million is frozen. They didn't manage to withdraw a single penny. I exhaled with relief. This was the first and most important victory. As long as the money was in place, everything could be resolved. Excellent. Thank you, Victor Stone. They probably didn't expect us to act so quickly. With criminals of this kind, you have to act fast, Miss Davis. An hour's delay can cost everything. Now that the money is safe, the next step is for me to work with the investigation on the signature expertises and get to that notary's office. You rest. I'll handle all legal matters. I understand. I have one more matter I need to resolve myself. I hung up. Almost immediately, a new email arrived from Emily. Attached was all the information I needed. The real estate company that handled the transaction was called Prime Properties Realty, a medium-sized firm with an office in Midtown. The director was a Mr. Evans. The buyer of the house, Arthur Peterson. The information Emily found was quite detailed. Mr. Peterson was a businessman involved in import-export of agricultural products, a man with a good reputation, not some speculator. He bought this mansion, according to Emily's data, for his eldest son as a wedding gift. This information somewhat reassured me. A person buying a home to live in is not the same as a speculator. Mr. Peterson was a respected man. He wouldn't want to get involved in a lengthy legal scandal. He would want to get his money back as quickly as possible. Thus, the goal was clear. I needed to deal with 2 parties, the negligent real estate company and the unwitting buyer. I stood up and went to my wardrobe. I chose a dark blue pantsuit and a white silk blouse, gathering my hair into a neat bun. Now I looked not like a devoted wife, but like a CEO preparing for complex negotiations. I called Steve, my driver. Steve, pick me up at Manhattan. We're going to the Prime Properties Realty office in Midtown. I decided to deal with the real estate agents first. I needed to show them the seriousness of the situation. The Prime Properties Realty office was located on a busy street in a rather respectable 3-story building. I entered with a cold demeanor and walked directly to the reception desk. I want to see your director, Mr. Evans. The receptionist, seeing my authoritative manner, was a little flustered. Excuse me, do you have an appointment? No, but just tell him that Marina Davis, the owner of the mansion in Greenwich, for which a transaction recently occurred, is here. I want to see him right now. I deliberately emphasized the word owner. The girl turned pale and hastily dialed an internal number. A few seconds later, she stammered, "Yes, please go up to the 2nd floor to the director's office." I went up the stairs. Mr. Evans, a man in his 40s with a paunch and glasses, was already waiting for me at his office door. He looked bewildered. Obviously, some rumors had already reached him. Hello. Hello. Miss Davis. Please come in. I didn't sit down. I stood in the middle of the room and looked him directly in the face. Mr. Evans, I didn't come here for tea. I am Marina Davis, the legal and sole owner of the mansion in Greenwich that your company recently helped sell to Mr. Peterson. Evans broke out in a sweat. Miss Davis, surely this is some misunderstanding. We acted strictly according to the documents. Your husband, David Miller, provided a notarized power of attorney. Notarized? I scoffed, but my eyes weren't smiling. That power of attorney is a forgery. My entire husband's family, including himself, his mother, sister, and the main organizer of the document forgery, Isaac, were arrested by the police last night. The charge is grand larceny and fraud on an especially large scale. The notary's office involved is also under investigation. With each of my words, Evans's face grew paler. When I finished, he could barely stand. Arrested? Precisely. And your company, Prime Properties Realty, as an intermediary, showed criminal negligence in verifying the owner. You facilitated an illegal transaction, causing me serious damage. I have all the evidence to sue your company, demand full compensation for damages, and have your license revoked. Evans trembled. Miss Davis, please calm down. We are also victims. We trusted the notarized documents. Who would have thought? I'm not interested in what you believed, I interrupted him. I'm only interested in the consequences. However, I came here today to give you one chance. Evans looked up, like a drowning man grasping at a straw. What chance? I demand your full cooperation with my lawyer and the investigation. Provide all documents related to the transaction, the correspondence history, surveillance camera footage showing Isaac and David coming to you, information about the employee who directly handled this case. If you cooperate and prove that your company only showed negligence, having been deceived, I may consider not holding you civilly liable. But if you try to hide or destroy evidence, I guarantee you, my lawyer will include Prime Properties Realty in the list of accomplices. Choose. Cooperate. We will cooperate, Evans nodded frantically. We will provide everything you need. I will immediately instruct employees to prepare everything. Please, be lenient. Your actions will decide everything. My lawyer will contact you. Having said this, I turned and left, leaving the sweaty man in his office. I had extinguished one fire. Now it was time to deal with the second. I did not return to the penthouse. I got in the car and asked Steve to simply drive around Midtown. I needed a quiet place for the next call. Having dealt with the real estate company, it was time to talk to Mr. Peterson. I dialed his number, which Emily had provided. I had thought everything through carefully. I needed to deal with Mr. Peterson differently. He was as much a victim as I was. Starting a war with him now would be unwise. We needed to be on the same side. The phone rang a few times, and an older man with a pleasant voice answered. Hello, Peterson speaking. Hello, Mr. Peterson. Excuse my intrusion. My name is Marina Davis. On the other end, there seemed to be surprise. Marina Davis? Excuse me, who is this? I am the owner of the mansion in Greenwich that you recently acquired under contract, I said slowly and clearly. Silence hung on the other end for a few seconds. I heard heavy breathing. Miss Davis, I don't quite understand. I bought the house through your husband, David. All documents were notarized. Mr. Peterson, my voice was soft but firm. I am very sorry to deliver bad news. You have been defrauded. The contract you signed has no legal validity whatsoever. How is that? Panic was in Peterson's voice. No validity? I have already paid $3 million. The money was transferred through the bank. I know, and I am calling you precisely for this reason. Mr. Peterson, please listen to me calmly. I am the sole owner of this house. This is my property, acquired before marriage. While I was on a month-long business trip in Europe, my husband and his family conspired, forged a power of attorney in my name, and sold the house to you. I only returned yesterday evening and discovered this. Oh my God, how? How is such a thing even possible? Fraud. This is precisely a criminal case of fraud. All those involved, including my husband, my mother-in-law, and her children, were arrested by the police last night. An investigation is underway. Arrested? Peterson's voice trembled. He was a reputable businessman. Association with criminal police was his worst nightmare. And my money? My $3 million? Oh, dear God. Mr. Peterson, calm down, I immediately assured him. This is the main reason for my call. You and we are both victims of these fraudsters. Your money is not lost. As soon as we discovered that $3 million had been transferred to 3 accounts of my mother-in-law and her children, my lawyer immediately went to court. This morning, the court issued an order to freeze all $3 million. Your money is safe and sound in the bank. They didn't manage to spend a single penny. This news was obviously a huge relief to him. I heard Peterson sigh heavily. Frozen? Thank God. Thank God. Miss Davis, are you? Are you telling the truth? Absolutely the truth. You can verify this through your bank. You are a businessman, and you understand perfectly well that we are in the same boat. This contract will undoubtedly be declared invalid by the court. You will not be able to get this house, but you will be able to get your $3 million back in full. What? What should I do now? Peterson asked. His voice was already calmer. I am calling you to propose cooperation. I will file a lawsuit in court to have this illegal transaction declared invalid. You, as the aggrieved party, along with your lawyer, should file a counterclaim for the return of the $3 million due to the invalidity of the transaction. If we cooperate and provide the investigation with all the evidence, the case will be crystal clear. The court will quickly rule to annul the contract and order the bank to unfreeze and return your money. I paused slightly and added the crucial argument. This is the fastest way to get your money back. If you do not cooperate or stubbornly demand the house, which is legally impossible since I did not sell it, then those $3 million will be considered evidence in the criminal case, and they will be frozen for a very, very long time, possibly for several years, until the criminal process is concluded. I don't think you want that. Peterson was a smart man. He immediately understood my position. I understand, Miss Davis, he said decisively. I understand everything perfectly. We are both victims. I will cooperate. I will immediately call my lawyer. We will file a statement and give all necessary testimony. I just want my money back. I truly sympathize with you, Miss Davis. And thank you for calling and informing me. Otherwise, I would have. It's all right, Mr. Peterson. We are simply protecting our legitimate interests. My lawyer will contact yours to coordinate actions. We ended the conversation. I leaned back in the seat. The two biggest external threats had been eliminated. The real estate company was scared to death. The home buyer had become an ally. Now all my attention would be focused on one thing: ensuring David's family received the harshest punishment under the law. The next day, as Andrew and my father predicted, a real media storm erupted. If the day before it had only been vague rumors in the tabloids, today morning dozens of leading online publications came out with sensational headlines. They dared not name me or Andrew directly, but the information was presented in great detail. Prominent businesswoman in import-export accuses husband and his family of seizing wedding gift mansion. Shocking fraud case in Greenwich. Son, daughter, and mother arrested. Loopholes in notary system and cunning plan to seize $3 million property. The names Marina Davis and David Miller became the most popular search queries. Photographs of my mansion, though blurred, were everywhere. New York business circles buzzed. This was no longer simple theft. This was a scandal about family morality, about bottomless greed that had occurred within a prominent family. My phone, though set to silent mode, vibrated nonstop. I knew this was the second wave of attack. An attack from those who called themselves relatives and acquaintances. First came the distant relatives of the Miller family, people I had only seen once or twice at holidays in 3 years. People whose names I didn't even remember. They called not to offer sympathy, but to lecture me. Some aunt from a small town called me and started wailing. Marina, you're the elder daughter-in-law. How could you throw your own mother-in-law and husband in jail, child? How can you be so cruel? Susan Miller, after all, is your husband's mother. What you did is a great sin, a disgrace to the whole family. If you don't want to save your husband's family's face, at least save your own. Now people will laugh. Withdraw the complaint immediately, child. I listened calmly. Hello. I do not believe that a citizen demanding legal protection for her lawful property is acting incorrectly. And as for reputation, whoever did what is responsible for it. I am busy. Goodbye. I didn't give her a chance to say anything else. Then followed messages. Dozens of messages from David's brothers, uncles, cousins. Some cursed me, calling me a treacherous snake, ungrateful, shameless. Others, on the contrary, pleaded, describing how hard Susan Miller, as a widow, had raised her children. What a kind person David was. And Chloe was just foolish. They said I should show compassion and forgive them this time, not air dirty laundry. I read the first few messages and stopped. I called Emily. Emily, from this moment on, block all unknown numbers or any numbers you know belong to the Miller clan. I don't want to be bothered. Filter all work correspondence through email before forwarding it to me. Yes, Miss Davis, I'll do it now. After I dealt with the relatives, a second wave of pressure followed, this time more sophisticated and unpleasant, from acquaintances, business partners, people from business circles. They didn't scold, they advised. Mr. Henderson, a rather close business partner, called. Marina, I heard what happened. My God, what a family tragedy. I sympathize with you. But Marina, don't be offended by my words. Aren't you acting a bit too harshly? You're a woman and a leader of a large corporation. Allowing this scandal to escalate so much will damage your image, your company's image. I knew he was saying this out of good intentions, but I could not agree with such logic. Thank you, Mr. Henderson, for your concern. But understand, this is a criminal case. They fraudulently seized my property. If I remain silent today, tomorrow they will take my company from me. I must set the record straight. I believe partners will understand. I am defending my lawful rights. This will not affect the business. Don't worry. Mr. Henderson seemed confused. Well, I understand, but still, you are husband and wife, dragging each other to court, to jail. What will people say then? Think carefully. You got your money back, and that's enough. If you can forgive, forgive. Do a good deed, Marina. Thank you. I have already made my decision. I politely hung up. I realized that a certain stereotype was deeply ingrained in many people's minds. A woman should sacrifice herself, endure, think about the common good, about family honor. Even if she is a victim, she should do a good deed and forgive those who wronged her. Otherwise, she is an evil, heartless woman. They were accustomed to Marina Davis, gentle, generous, who unhesitatingly supported her husband's family. They were not ready for Marina Davis, decisive, cold, ready to use the law to punish the guilty. They were wrong. My generosity was voluntary, not an obligation. And my kindness, once misplaced, would not be repeated. I stood by the window, looking at the city. The press, public opinion, relatives. I foresaw all of this. If I had backed down because of some gossip, I would not be Marina Davis. The harder you push, the more determined I will be to go all the way. After several days of unsuccessful pressure through the press and acquaintances, the Miller family apparently realized that appealing to my compassion or invoking notions of family honor was useless. They moved to the next step, a dirty and desperate one. I was reviewing financial reports that Emily had just sent when Victor Stone called. His voice was more serious than usual. Miss Davis, I need to tell you something urgently. The lawyer for the accused, Isaac Miller, contacted me. I was a little surprised. David was my husband, Susan Miller my mother-in-law, but Isaac was the main organizer of the document fraud. He had always been the most dangerous and stubborn of them. Yes, Victor Stone, tell me. Did he want to propose a reconciliation? Victor Stone cleared his throat. He didn't ask for reconciliation. He made demands, or rather, a threat. I stopped flipping through documents. A threat? He's in jail and still manages to threaten me? Yes, Victor Stone continued. His lawyer conveyed that if you do not immediately sign a statement withdrawing your claims and drop your case against his entire family, Isaac Miller will publish evidence of your marital infidelity. For a moment, I froze, not from fear, but from his audacity. Marital infidelity? Mine? Exactly, Victor Stone continued. He claims he has evidence, photographs, and correspondence, confirming that you cheated on your husband with a French partner during your month-long business trip to Europe. He said he would post all of this on social media and send it to news editors so the public would see that you are a promiscuous woman who, wanting to get rid of her husband for a lover, decided to frame his entire family. I laughed a cold, contemptuous laugh. Evidence? Evidence from Europe? Victor Stone, who is he trying to scare? Victor Stone's voice became a little calmer when he heard my laugh. I also assumed it was a bluff, but his lawyer's tone was very confident. It seems they really have something. Possibly doctored photographs or fabricated correspondence. So, that's how they plan to turn the case into a family dispute. I said. Fabricate a story about my infidelity to prove that the conflict between us arose long ago, that I am no longer a victim of fraud, but a sinful wife taking revenge on her husband's family. Not bad. A worm, when stepped on, also wriggles. It's just a shame this worm is too stupid. I was absolutely calm. My entire business trip, all my schedules, had been organized by Emily. At all meetings, at least 2 of my assistants were present. My French partners were all respected older gentlemen. Isaac thinks he can fabricate a story based on a few photos from a business dinner. What is your decision, Miss Davis? Victor Stone asked. My decision is crystal clear, I replied, and my voice hardened. He wants another charge. He'll get it. Victor Stone, do several things for me immediately. First, draft an official letter to Isaac's lawyer. Clearly state that Isaac Miller's actions fall under statutes governing defamation and extortion. Second, demand that if they indeed have evidence, they immediately provide it to the investigative authorities. We will demand an expert examination. If they do not provide it, and dare to publish it online, their guilt will be even greater. Third, prepare an additional criminal complaint, detailing the extortion and defamation, and send it directly to Andrew at NYPD headquarters, attaching your account of the phone conversation with that lawyer. I want the investigation to document this incident. Fourth, contact Andrew and ask him to find out how Isaac is communicating with the outside world, whether his lawyer is an accomplice in relaying threats. Victor Stone listened and replied curtly, Understood, Miss Davis. I will deal with this immediately. This Isaac really is digging his own grave. Such behavior will only worsen his situation, and there can be no talk of leniency. He thought I would be scared, I said, looking out the window. He thought that as a female executive, I would fear rumors of infidelity more than losing money. He underestimated me from the very beginning. Hanging up, I felt disgusted. David, though a coward and an accomplice, at least cried and begged for mercy. Susan Miller, though greedy, could only scream and curse. But Isaac, he was a malicious, cunning, and petty man. Even while arrested, he did not cease his attempts to harm me using the dirtiest methods. I would never forgive such a person. I would do everything to make him pay the highest price for his foolishness and malice. I knew Isaac Miller was not one to make empty threats. He was cornered, and people like him, in such a situation, are capable of anything, even dragging everyone down into the mire they themselves created. His threat was not a spur-of-the-moment impulse. It was a backup plan. And this plan was put into action just 2 days after Victor Stone's call. That morning, I had just finished an online meeting with the board of directors when Emily called. Her voice, which was extremely rare, was agitated. Miss Davis, you should look online. Something bad has happened. I opened my browser. I didn't have to search. My photographs had spread with viral speed across several tabloid news sites and Telegram channels. My face was blurred, but anyone who knew me could easily recognize it. It was a photograph from a business dinner in a fancy restaurant in Paris. Whoever published it had deliberately cropped the image, leaving only me and one man. They chose an angle where I was smiling and leaning towards the partner to hear him better. This man, Monsieur Dubois, a French business partner in his 60s, a respected and gallant gentleman, was suddenly turned into my lover. Below the photo was a long article, written in an ambiguous tone, describing me as a cold businesswoman with a complicated personal life. The article hinted that during my month-long business trip, I not only worked, but also developed romantic relationships with a partner. But that wasn't all. What was worse, they published a series of messages, supposedly mine and my lover's. These messages were skillfully fabricated. In them, I complained about my husband, calling David weak and untalented, and said that I wanted to be free of this marriage. The culmination was the phrase, "I will deal with everything at home. His entire family will no longer be an obstacle." The article was published under the sensational headline, "The Truth About the $3 Million Greenwich Deal. Unfaithful Wife Brutally Deals with Family to Clear the Way for Her Lover." This was an organized smear campaign. They didn't just want to accuse me of infidelity. They wanted to completely reverse the nature of the case. They wanted to turn me from a victim of fraud into the main villain of a cunning conspiracy, slandering and framing her husband's entire family to seize property and get a divorce. They wanted to create a dramatic story to make the public believe that I did all of this for another man. Public opinion, which had previously sided with me due to the greed of my husband's family, immediately shifted. David's relatives seemed to get a second wind. The same aunt who called me the day before called again. This time, her voice was full of malice. "I knew it, you hussy. My nephew David is so kind. He tolerated you for so many years, and you cheated on him and slandered his entire family. Villain. But God sees everything. You won't get away with this." I hung up. Emily called again and reported that our corporation's website and social media were being attacked with negative comments. I was called a cruel witch, a thief crying thief, and a traitor. I stood silently by the window, looking at the city. The rage did not explode. It transformed into an icy calm. Isaac had personally thrown away his last chance. He thought I would be scared. He thought that a female executive's reputation would make me back down, agree to a reconciliation to hush up the scandal. He was wrong. I picked up the phone. I didn't call Victor Stone. I called Andrew directly. "Andrew, did you see the morning news?" Andrew's voice on the other end was harsh. "I did. They dared. I was just about to call you. This is organized defamation, seriously damaging a citizen's honor and showing signs of obstructing the investigation." "I know," I said. "Therefore, I ask you for two things. First, I want your department to deal with this immediately. Track down the source of these publications, find out who uploaded these cropped photos and fake messages. I want to know exactly which media company was paid for this work." "Already on it," Andrew replied. "Results will be available soon." "Second," I continued, "I want you to immediately summon Isaac Miller's lawyer for questioning. He's the one who conveyed the threat to Victor Stone. I want you to find out the role of this lawyer in the defamation. He's not just a messenger. I understand you, Marina. Don't worry, the more they do, the heavier their guilt will be. This time, they won't get away with it. I'm not going to save them. I just want them to pay." I hung up and dialed my father's number. I knew he had also seen the news. And indeed, my father answered immediately. "I'm listening, darling. Have you read it yet?" His voice was deep. "Yes, Dad, I have." "Scum!" my father roared, which was rare for him. They dared to use such methods against my daughter. "All right, you don't need to worry about anything. Let Andrew and Victor Stone handle the legal matters, and I'll handle the business." "What are you going to do?" "That Isaac, his import-export firm. I know who he works with. He has a major partner who's been covering for him all this time, someone from the Taylor family. You can rest assured, from today, I'll show them what it means to mess with my daughter." I knew that if my father said it, he would do it. I had also heard of the Taylor family my father mentioned. They were a considerable force in business. If Isaac relied on them, then that support would now be destroyed. This war had gone beyond a family conflict. It had become a full-scale confrontation, and I would not retreat an inch. My father's anger translated into action even faster than the investigation progressed. My father built his empire from scratch. He knew perfectly well how brutal the business world was, and he also knew the weaknesses of people like Isaac people who build their business on connections, not on real work. In just one day after my call, my father delivered a blow. He didn't need to justify himself in the press. He used his influence in business circles. He called several old friends, leaders of major corporations, and also directly the head of the Taylor family, the very partner Isaac always boasted about as his reliable support. I don't know exactly what my father said. I only know the result. The same day, Mr. Taylor, whom Isaac called Uncle, personally called Victor Stone. He expressed his deepest regret that he had not known the true nature of the matter. He stated that his company was immediately ceasing all dealings and severing any business relations with Isaac Miller's firm. The reason? Discovery of commercial fraud and inappropriate business ethics on the part of the partner. This was a fatal blow. The Taylor family didn't just sever ties, they publicly announced the reason. This meant that Isaac not only lost his support, but all other business doors were closed to him in the future. Even if he were to get out of jail, my father had completely destroyed his economic future. Meanwhile, on the legal front, Andrew also acted decisively. His department, with the help of specialized equipment, quickly traced the source of the defamatory publications. They originated from a small media company in a New York borough that specialized in crisis PR and shaping public opinion in simpler terms. A professional troll factory. Andrew ordered an emergency search of their office that same night. The results exceeded all expectations. They found a contract for discrediting services worth $75,000, and the client was none other than Isaac Miller, who signed the contract through his lawyer. Moreover, they found drafts of articles and original photographs before they were cropped and edited. Ironclad evidence of defamation was in the hands of the police. Isaac's lawyer was immediately summoned for questioning on suspicion of complicity. But just when I thought everything was gradually falling into place, an unexpected call came. It was Allison, my best friend, owner of an event agency. "Marina, are you busy? I have something. I've been thinking for several days, but now I have to tell you." Allison's voice was very serious. "I'm listening. Tell me." Allison took a deep breath. "Marina, do you remember Chloe, your husband's sister?" "How could I forget her?" I replied, a little puzzled. About 2 weeks before you returned." Allison began to explain. "She herself found me. I was very surprised. We weren't close. She set up a meeting with me at a cafe and started hinting." "What did she say?" "She said you would be back soon, and she knew we were best friends. She asked, 'Do you know anything about Marina's special relationships in France?' I said I didn't know anything. You went on a business trip, not to have fun." Allison paused, then continued. Her voice was full of indignation. "And then, guess what she said? She said, 'Allison, I know your business isn't doing great right now. Maybe you could help me? You just have to say that you heard rumors that Marina has someone in France. When all this is over, I won't forget you. I'll give you $150,000 just for coffee, so to speak.'" My heart stopped for a moment. $150,000 for a lie? "What did you tell her?" I asked. My voice had turned icy. "I told her to get lost," Allison said. "I told her to leave. I told her that if I told you about this, she wouldn't have a peaceful life. I didn't think she would dare to do it herself. She couldn't buy me, so they just made up the whole story. Marina, this family isn't human. They're devils. Chloe looks so young, but how cunning she is." I was silent. This information was incredibly important. "Allison," I said in a calm voice. Thank you for telling me. And now, can you do one last favor for me? Anything you need. Can you repeat this whole story as a witness before the investigative authorities?" On the other end, there was silence for a few seconds. I knew I was putting Allison in a difficult position. Being a witness in a criminal case was no joke. But then Allison replied decisively, "Yes, I can. I can't let you fight this pack of bastards alone. They must be punished." I hung up. Another piece of the puzzle fell into place. This case was no longer just fraud. It had escalated to a new level. They didn't just want to take my house. They planned everything in advance, long before my return, to defame, frame, and destroy me. Chloe seeking Allison to buy false testimony. Isaac hiring a lawyer, preparing evidence of infidelity. All of this was part of a carefully orchestrated plot. I immediately called Victor Stone. "Victor Stone," I said, "we have a new witness. An incredibly important witness, proving that Chloe Miller planned the defamation in advance." I recounted Allison's entire story. Victor Stone, usually calm, couldn't contain his emotions. My God, they thought of everything down to such details. "Miss Davis, rest assured, I will immediately contact the investigation and add your friend's testimony to the case file. This is an extremely important aggravating circumstance. It proves the organized nature of their actions and their malicious intent." Now everything was clear. David, Susan Miller, Chloe, Isaac. None of them were innocent. The investigation into the defamation campaign against me uncovered a direction I couldn't even have imagined. When Andrew and his team started digging deeper into the media company hired by Isaac, they needed to trace the money flow for the contract payment. The money had been transferred from Isaac's firm's account, Miller & Co., Import-Export LLC. To legalize the tracing of this flow, the investigation had legal grounds to request a full bank statement for this company's account for the past 6 months, and that's when everything came to light. Andrew called me that evening. In his voice, there was no longer the tension of a detective solving a case, but the surprise of a person who had stumbled upon something huge. "Marina, where are you? Can I come over? There's something we need to discuss in person." I felt the matter was serious. "I'm at the penthouse. Come over." Half an hour later, Andrew was at my place. He didn't come alone, but with an officer from the Economic Crimes Unit. Andrew placed a folder of documents on the table. "Marina," he said, "you need to be prepared for what I'm about to tell you." "What else, Andrew?" "That brother-in-law of yours, Isaac." Andrew shook his head. "He's not just a family fraudster. He's a genuine economic criminal." Andrew opened the folder. "These are statements from his firm's bank account, and these are his tax reports." He slid them towards me. "Look, cash turnovers of tens of millions a month, but according to the reports, nothing but losses. Do you understand what this means?" I was from business. I understood perfectly. "Shell company," I said coldly. "He created the company just to launder money. This is fabricating false invoices and tax evasion." "Exactly." Andrew lightly tapped the table. "And even more, his firm, Miller & Co., conducted virtually no real import-export activity. It was just a facade. His main business was illegal trading of invoices with VAT. He bought incoming invoices from other shell companies, then sold outgoing invoices to businesses that wanted to evade taxes. He kept a percentage for himself. Tens of millions a month, that was the money he was running through to legitimize these effective invoices. I was truly shocked. I knew Isaac was an idler, a braggart, and a talentless individual. I gave him startup capital, hoping he would engage in honest business. I couldn't have imagined that he would use that money to create an entire criminal scheme. "The $75,000 contract for defamation against you," Andrew continued. "He also ran that through as media consulting expenses for his firm. He used criminal money to commit yet another crime. This guy has a wagon load of audacity. And what? What now?" "He's finished, Marina," Andrew smirked. "From a fraud case, we've moved on to a large-scale case of tax evasion and illegal invoice trading. This, combined with grand larceny and defamation, is something even 10 men like Isaac couldn't talk their way out of." "Andrew," I said, "I want to ask. The startup capital for this firm came from me. Could I be implicated in this?" Andrew immediately waved his hand. "No, don't worry. You gave him money. Those are civil legal relations. The money was transferred to his personal account, and the fact that he used it to create a criminal firm is his personal business. You are absolutely not involved here. You are a victim. Moreover, you indirectly helped the investigation uncover this case. You should be thanked." Andrew stood up. "All right. I need to go to a meeting about this case. This is no longer a routine case. It's been transferred to the Special Economic Crimes Unit. All of Isaac's accounting records, computers, and firm documents are sealed. Soon, much more interesting things will come to light. You rest and await the trial." I escorted Andrew to the door, my mind in a whirl. Everything had gone much further than I could have imagined. Susan Miller was greedy, Chloe was foolish, David was a coward. But Isaac, he was a truly poisonous snake. He took advantage of my trust, used my money to build his criminal empire. A feeling of disgust overcame me. If not for this story of the house sale, who knows how deeply he would have become entrenched and how many more people he would have deceived. Now I understood why he threatened me so aggressively. He was trying to save not just the $3 million case. He was trying to protect his criminal business, which brought him tens, if not hundreds, of millions. He was afraid that Andrew and I would start digging deeper. And it was that fear that led him to make a foolish move, which ultimately exposed him. Crimes piled one on top of another. This family had transformed from merely problematic to an organized crime group, and I had no choice but to clean up the mess. Several months later, the open trial of the Miller family took place. The case had generated so much buzz that a crowd of reporters and simply curious onlookers gathered outside the New York State Supreme Court building from early morning. I arrived at the courthouse with Victor Stone. I chose a black pantsuit, my hair pulled back in a high bun. I didn't want to look like a suffering victim. I came here to see justice served. As I stepped out of the car, dozens of cameras aimed at me. I didn't hide. I looked directly into the lenses and walked with a firm stride. A solemn atmosphere reigned in the courtroom. I sat on the victim's bench. Across from me, in the defendant's box, sat the four of them. The time spent in jail seemed to have taken a heavy toll on them. Susan Miller, always well-groomed and arrogant, was now heavily grayed and gaunt. Her eyes darted nervously around the room. Chloe, the capricious sister-in-law, did nothing but cry. Her eyes were swollen, and her body trembled. David, my husband, was drawn. His face was emaciated. He didn't dare meet my gaze and stared at the floor. But most of my attention was drawn to Isaac. He too had lost weight, but in his eyes, there was still a stubbornness. He looked at me not with remorse, but with hatred and malice. He hated me for destroying everything. The trial began. The judge read out the indictment. Each charge sounded clear and weighty. Susan Miller, David Miller, Chloe Miller, Isaac Miller were charged with grand larceny and fraud committed by an organized group on an especially large scale, aiming to seize $3 million. Defendant Isaac Miller was additionally charged with defamation, forgery of official documents, tax evasion, and racketeering. The courtroom buzzed. No one expected that a family scam would grow into a full-blown case of serious economic crimes. Victor Stone, as my representative, presented the entire story, providing evidence of my ownership, proof of my absence from the country, and even the recording of my overheard conversation about dividing the money. The questioning began. David was called first. Standing before the court, answering questions, he completely broke down. Defendant, did you know that the house was your wife's personal property? Yes. Yes, Your Honor, I knew. David's voice trembled. Knowing this, why did you still sign the forged power of attorney and sales contract? David looked up at me. His face was streaked with tears. Marina, forgive me, the devil made me do it. Mom put me up to it. I didn't want to, but Mom said we were one family. I was foolish. Coward! Susan Miller's cry rang out. You ungrateful son, blaming everything on your mother, weakling. I don't have such a son. The judge's gavel struck the table. Defendant Miller, maintain order, or I will order you removed from the courtroom. Susan Miller fell silent but continued to glare at David. Next was Chloe. She only cried. I didn't know anything. Mom said she was giving me money, and I took it. I didn't know it was money from Marina's house sale. I asked Marina to forgive me. A clumsy performance. Allison's testimony, my friends, about how Chloe offered her $150,000 for a lie, was read out. Chloe's words now looked ridiculous. When Isaac began to be questioned, he behaved defiantly. He answered evasively, clearly provoking the court. But when the prosecutor began to present evidence of tax evasion by the shell company and the scheme with illegal invoices, Isaac began to lose his composure. This evidence is fabricated. I was framed, he shouted. Framed? The prosecutor asked coldly. And the $75,000 contract you signed with the media company to defame Miss Davis? Was that also fabricated? And the testimony of that company's director, who confessed to acting on your orders, was that also fabricated? Isaac fell silent. He knew he had no more to say. He turned to me and growled, You evil witch! Satisfied? You ruined my whole family. I'll get out and I'll still get my revenge on you. 2 court bailiffs immediately seized Isaac. For a moment, chaos reigned in the courtroom. I sat motionless. His words did not frighten me. They only confirmed that my decision had been absolutely correct. There was nothing human left in these people. They deserved no forgiveness. After a tense day of court hearings, the court retired for deliberation to deliver the verdict, which was scheduled for the next morning. The next morning, I returned to court. The atmosphere was even more tense than the day before. The entire courtroom fell silent when the judges entered. Everyone stood. The judge began to read the verdict. His voice was clear and distinct. He analyzed each action, each crime, the role of each defendant. Having considered all the materials of the case, aggravating and mitigating circumstances, the court decided to find Susan Miller guilty of committing a crime under the statutes governing grand larceny and fraud, committed by an organized group. The defendant was the organizer, inciting her children to commit the crime, to impose a sentence of imprisonment for a term of 12 years. Susan Miller swayed. She had no strength to scream. She just stood, disbelieving her ears. To find Chloe Miller guilty of committing a crime under the statutes governing grand larceny and fraud, committed by an organized group, as an active accomplice, with intent to commit defamation against the victim, to impose a sentence of imprisonment for a term of 5 years. Chloe collapsed onto the bench. Her weeping was full of despair. To find David Miller guilty of committing a crime under the statutes governing grand larceny and fraud, committed by an organized group, as an active accomplice who directly signed the forged documents and facilitated the commission of the crime. However, taking into account the defendant's sincere repentance in court, to impose a sentence of imprisonment for a term of 8 years. David squeezed his eyes shut. 8 years. The fate of my weak-willed husband was sealed. Finally, the judge looked at Isaac. To find Isaac Miller guilty of committing crimes under the statutes governing grand larceny and fraud, defamation, forgery of official documents, tax evasion, and racketeering. The defendant played a key role in the commission of fraud, was the organizer of defamation, and the organizer of serious economic crimes that caused significant damage to the state. His actions represent a particular danger to society. No remorse was shown. For the totality of crimes, to impose a sentence of imprisonment on Isaac Miller for a term of 19 years. Isaac no longer screamed. He just stood. His handcuffed hands were clenched into fists, and his eyes burned with hatred for me. Regarding the civil claim, the judge continued. The court ruled to oblige the defendants to jointly compensate the full damage to the victim, Marina Davis, to annul the contract of sale of real estate with Arthur Peterson, to lift the freezing order on the $3 million in the defendant's accounts and immediately return it to Arthur Peterson. The verdict was delivered. Justice, though delayed, had been served. I watched as the 4 convicted individuals were led away to the police van. There was calm in my soul. Neither joy nor malice, just relief, as if a heavy burden that had weighed on me for so long had been lifted from my shoulders. Immediately after the trial, I filed for divorce unilaterally. David's criminal conviction was irrefutable proof of his guilt. In the breakdown of the marriage, the court considered my petition very quickly. All my personal property, including the Greenwich mansion itself, was returned to me. As for jointly acquired property, we had another luxury apartment downtown, valued at about $1.2 million. Although I had provided the money for it, it was registered in both our names. Since the fault for the divorce lay entirely with David, the court ordered that 100% of this apartment be transferred to me. He left with nothing, exactly as he had come to me, with the only difference being that now he had an 8-year sentence behind him. Several months later, I sold the Greenwich mansion. I couldn't live in a place filled with such lies and dirty memories. I also sold the apartment downtown. I finally moved permanently into my penthouse in Manhattan. I focused entirely on work. My corporation, after minor upheavals due to news about its CEO, quickly stabilized and began to develop even more rapidly. Partners, learning the whole story, respected my resolve even more. One evening, Emily brought me an envelope. Miss Davis, a letter from the correctional facility. I opened it. It was a letter from David. Several pages, written in a shaky hand. He begged for forgiveness. He wrote of his remorse. He wrote that his mother forced him. He wrote that he still loved me. I quickly skimmed these belated apologies. I felt nothing. No anger, no pity. My heart had gone cold. That very evening, when I stood before the locked gates, I put the letter in the shredder. The uniform sound of paper being cut filled the air. I stood by the window, looking at New York sparkling with lights. It was all over. I didn't need his apologies. My life, from this moment on, belonged only to me. A new page had truly opened. With that, our story for today concludes. If you found it meaningful and wish to hear more interesting, touching, and profound stories, please like, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next video. Thank you for your attention. See you in the next episode.